Today, we're going to take an image that looks like this and transform it to something that looks like this using On1 Photo RAW. Now, if you want to follow along, you can download the image using the link in the description box below. Now let's jump into On1 Photo RAW. Here we are inside of On1 Photo RAW with our basic image. No edits on it so far. So let's go ahead and start with the develop module, because that's where we're going to really build in that contrast and that deeper, darker tone overall. That being said, we're going to start with the camera profile. If you click on camera profile, you'll notice that there's a few options available. The ones that I recommend for this particular edit would be On1 Landscape or On1 Vivid. Now, Landscape is a little bit more saturated, darker blues overall. On1 Vivid is a little bit more light contrast, if you will. So I think I'm going to go with On1 Vivid because it fits the overall palette of what I'm desiring, but you choose the camera profile that works best for you. Then we'll come down here to the tone section. And inside of the tone section, you could do a number of things. The first thing that I want to do is hold down my J key so that way I can see where my clipping indicators are. And I want to get rid of this highlight issue. So I'm just going to pull down on my highlights until that goes away. And that's about right. And so when you do that, you lose a little bit of contrast in the overall photo. So let's go ahead and clean that up just a bit. So just holding down the J key, I'm going to pull up on the contrast, and I'm also going to pull down on my black point. And I'm looking for these blue indicators here to show me where I'm losing the most detail. Once I do that, then I know I need to back that off just a little bit. And my goal here is to just establish a really nice boundary of black and white point. This is called setting your dynamic range if you're not familiar with that. And then I do the same thing with the white point, just in the opposite direction. I know that the sky is going to be my culprit. I've only made it up to +3 points. So I'm probably just going to pull this back to 0 and leave it alone. And that's actually a good point when it comes to editing inside of really any photo editing software, but On1 specifically. You don't always have to move a slider just because it's available to you. It's a tool that you can leave sitting right where it is. Then what I like to do is just mess around with my midtones. And because I know that I'm going for a more dramatic look in this image, I usually want to darken the midtones. And if I hold the J key down, you can see I could go pretty far in either direction with this and still get a good indication of like the overall dramatic or drama, if you will. But if I hold the J key down, you can see in this lower right corner and even the lower left corner, I'm losing some details. So that just means pull up on my black point. So now I think the basic adjustments for tone look good. Here's the before and here's the after. And so the next thing that we want to do to the image is increase the structure. And all RAW files, they need some sort of a structure increase. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up on this particular structure. And you can see that the trees down here, they start to get a little bit brighter. And that's helpful overall. But I'm really looking at the mountain because those trees aren't as important to me. So as long as the mountain looks good, that's what I'm really focused on. And then we have the haze slider. If you pull down on the haze slider, it gets rid of some of that white overcast. And then of course, if you pull up on it, it's going to include haze. Now, this could be a very, very creative effect that if you want to apply haze to your image, this is probably the way to do it. But for me, I want to remove a little bit of that haze so we get a more contrasty and overall dramatic image. So that's all I'll do in the structure section. Now, the next step is working with the saturation. And in the past, you may have seen me remove saturation from the photo before I start doing the tonal adjustments. But because I would know that the colors play a huge role in the dramatic look that we're going for in this image, I wanted to leave the colors alone and then just come back and dial them in later. So what we'll do is pull the saturation all the way down, and you can see I got a really good tonal adjustment just by or without using the negative saturation trick So now I can just go ahead and pull up on the saturation until I feel like it is coloring in the image to the point that I like. And I don't want a heavily saturated image because we're going to add in a bunch of contrast and some local adjustments that's going to make the image look a little bit more colorful. And then I'll come in and push a little bit of vibrance because it's always good to increase your vibrance in an image, especially one that had a very narrow dynamic range to begin with. So here's the before, and here is after all of the adjustments that I'm going to make inside of the develop section. Now it's time to move over to the local section, and let me just hold down the J key. Yep, I don't have any corrections that I need to do. All right, now with the local section, I'm going to focus on something called dodging and burning. That's just making things darker and brighter wherever I feel the viewer should pay attention. I know that my main subject is this mountain, and that seems to be in the midground. So if we were to separate this image into thirds, we have the foreground, which is this main plane down here. And then we have the mountain, which I would say is the subject in the midground. And then we have the sky, which is in the background. So I'm going to work with my subject first and then make everything else fall in comparison to that. So let's go ahead and start off with a quick mask AI brush because I think this is going to be the best way of selecting the mountain. So once On1 gets done scanning the image, it should give me my little crosshair and I can click here and I can select the mountain. Now, I don't need to select the entire mountain for what I'm doing because that's just not my cup of tea. But if that's something you want to do, you can obviously come over here and select more of the mountain if that's what you want. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the blue check mark and call that good. And then what I want to do is increase the structure on the mountain. And this is an additional structure increase than what we had previously. And then I'm going to hold down the J key and we're going to start working with some of the highlights here. And I think that by increasing them a little bit helps it pop. I'm going to add some contrast to this. And then I'm also going to boost the mids, but pull down on the shadowed areas. So that way, where the light is hitting is getting brighter, but the shadow side of the mountain is a little bit darker. Let me go ahead and turn this off and then turn it back on. You can see we're starting to contour the mountain, and that's kind of the goal and the reason why I'm only focusing on the peak of the mountain here. Now, I'll leave that alone. You should rename your adjustments, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to. Now we're going to start working with the sky. So I'm going to grab the sky mask here by clicking sky. If I press the letter O, you can see it selected the sky, but it also selected a part of my mountain. So I need to get rid of that part of the mountain that it selected. With the new masking tools inside of On1, we can just click the plus icon here under the mask layers. And then I'm going to click the quick mask AI brush, add the, that was supposed to be subtract, but that's okay. It's going to work out either way. I'm going to just go ahead and click and select this. So that way it includes it into the mask. And so if I press the letter O, you can see that's not what I was going for. However, if I come over here and I click the 3-line menu for the quick mask AI, and then I come down to mode and I click on subtract and I press the letter O, you can see it has now subtracted that, but it's subtracted it from everything. And so let's just remove this completely and do that one more time. So with the plus icon, quick mask AI, click subtract this time, and then we'll just erase that from the mask. And we should see that the mask AI, if I hit the letter O, bam. Now the mountain is not selected as much. There's a little bit right here, and if I wanted to, I could clean that up with a brush. I'm not going to worry about that because I don't think it's going to impact the final image. So for this adjustment, what I like to do is make my skies just a tad bit darker. So I'm going to pull down on the exposure, and then that should resolve a lot of what's going on there. And then I'm also going to desaturate the sky just a bit. So I'm reducing the saturation in the sky just to help my mountain pop and stand off of the background just a little bit more. And that's also why I decrease the exposure. So if we come up here and turn off this adjustment, you can see the sky is vibrant, it's beautiful, but it's not really my main focus. So then if I turn that down, it makes the mountain pop out just a little bit more. The next step is to work with the top part of the sky for this dramatic lighting. And so I'm going to grab a gradient brush this time, or a gradient mask. And I'm just going to rotate this around and put it at the top here. Kind of just fade it down like so. And we'll make a negative exposure adjustment. And we'll make it a very, very large adjustment like so. Now, at the current moment, this is going over the mountain, but again, we know how to fix that. So I'm just going to hit the plus icon, come over here again to the quick mask AI, click subtract this time so I don't mess that up, and then click the mountain, hit the blue check mark, and then our mountain is going to be restored back to its complete glory. And I really love working this way. And so the reason I did that is I already made the sky dark, but I wanted the top part of the sky just a little bit darker than this portion that's down here. Now, what I also may want to do is include kind of a glow effect that's happening in the background. I haven't quite figured out if I want to do that, so I'm probably not going to concern myself with it for this tutorial, but if that's something you're interested in seeing, you let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you're finding value in today's content, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. I have my sky and I have my mountain pretty much where I want it to be. I need to work with this foreground area, and the light is what I want to use to kind of direct the viewer's eye into the mountain. And so I like that the light is going diagonal in this direction. So what I want to do is probably just darken down this area here a bit using a gradient. So we'll just go ahead and grab a gradient brush, hit add. But I think I want to use a circular, or the radial gradient. That's the one I'm looking for. So we'll just go ahead and decrease that. And let's pull down on the exposure. Oh, I got this backwards. I'm working on the outside of the image, and I don't want to do that. So, or the outside of the gradient. I want to work inside of the gradient. So I need to change my shape from edges to center. All right. And then just pull this out and I'll rotate it around. And I'm going to put it like right in here. Just need to rotate it. Okay. And so it's a little bit darker than I probably need it to be because it just doesn't match the rest of the image. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up on the exposure, and it's just going to darken this area down a little bit, but leave that light in comparison to the rest of the image. And then of course I need to work with this light area over here. And the way that I'm going to work with that, at least for right now, the dodging and burning, is I'm going to add in a luminosity mask. That's what I want to add. And I'm just going to press the letter O so I can pay attention to what's going on with the image. Now, if you're not familiar with how a luminosity mask works, it just selects pixels based off of their brightness value. Anywhere that you see white, that's where my adjustment that I apply is going to go. And anywhere that you see black, that's where the adjustment is going to be protected from. Now, to adjust the selection of brightest to darkest pixel, what you can do is just come to this window section in the luminosity tool here. And I know that I want to focus on brighter areas. So I just need to click and drag this up until I hone in on that one area, which seems to be pretty good right there. And then I'll come over here and pull this down. And you don't have to get it exactly perfect across the entire image. You just need to make sure that the area that you're focusing on is actually working well. So I think that I'm good right there. And so I'm going to go ahead and press the letter O, and I'm going to increase my exposure just so I can see it when I start to apply this effect overall. And then I'll probably tone it down a bit. Now, at the moment, this looks hideous on the rest of the image. So I'm going to use an intersect mask to really select just this area right here. To do that, I'm going to come over to mask layers, click the plus icon, come down to the brush. And it doesn't matter if you click add or subtract here. I'm going to click add. Now, what I'm going to do is come over to the brush that I just added. I'm going to click the 3-line menu, come down to mode, and then click on intersect. And what this does is it gives me the brush, and I can just paint this over the area that I want to apply this in. But you'll notice that it took it out of all of the other areas. Now, if you have questions about how the intersect mask works, check the link in the description box. I have a video where I showed how this works, but I'm just going to go ahead and apply it for today's video. And, you know, if you got questions about it, definitely check out that video and let me know. Now, I only need this to be just in the bright areas here, right? So I'm not worried about the exposure of this area. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that down. What I care about is maintaining the highlights, and I just want to make this a little bit more punchy. We may even contrast it a bit. And I guess I do need to increase the exposure just to brighten this up. And the reason, this is like a natural line leading right into the main subject. I darken this area down so that way we start to move the viewer up into the mountain. And then I darken the sky down so that way the viewer's eye would come back into the mountain. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to do all of that. We might even apply just a little bit of warmth, but I typically don't do this in the local section just because I don't like the temperature point system. I prefer the Kelvin system or other tools, but I digress. And then maybe we'll make it a little bit more vibrant in this area and just get rid of that temperature exposure. I don't know. We'll go with that. All right, so let me minimize the masking so we can clean all this up. And let's just take a look at the before and the after overall. Now, you could stop here, but I think that this can go just a little bit further, and that's where we're going to start adding in effects. All right, so now that we're in effects, first one that I'm going to apply is a bleach bypass. And by default, that just looks phenomenal. I love the way that the bleach bypass really just attacks the image, but it could be a little too strong. So we can pull back on the amount, and let's just decrease the brightness and maybe even push the detail just a bit more, and then throw some saturation in there. So here's what the image looks like with the bleach bypass. And then if I turn it off, this is where, again, we started coming into the effects section. If I turn it back on, here is the image, but it's a little too strong. So let's just go ahead and grab the opacity slider, pull this all the way down, and fade this into the image just to the point where we're getting that dramatic look. And I think this looks pretty good right there. I'm going to hold down the J key just to make sure I'm not losing information. I don't plan to print this, but I want to keep my dynamic range under control as best I can until I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. All right. So bleach bypass added. I think the next thing could be the sunshine filter. It's going to be under landscape. We'll add a sunshine filter. And I just love how this adds some saturation and warmth to the image, where I wasn't a fan of the warmth slider in the local adjustment tab. I do like the warmth slider, which I guess in the local adjustment is temperature. But in the sunshine filter, it's titled warmth. And I do appreciate the way that it works here versus there. And I don't know if it's just because this amount slider is dialing it back. I have no clue, but I enjoy it more. So I just feel like the bleach bypass was killing some of that color, and that's why I'm adding the sunshine filter. We'll pull up on the saturation here just a little bit, like so. And I think that that brings the image to a good stopping point. Now, here is the before and here is the after. Now, of course, if you wanted to do one final adjustment and just like set this over the edge, you could go add filter, and then you could apply dynamic contrast. And this is like a staple in On1. If you're new to On1, this is a tool that many users of the software are like just in love with. And what we'll do is I only want to apply it to the mountain. Now, the way that I've been using masks inside of Photo RAW 2026 is I like to build them in local and then just copy and paste them over here to the effects section. So if I come back over to local, you remember earlier, we already have a mask of just the mountain. So I'm just going to right click on that thumbnail and I'm going to click copy. Then I can jump back over to effects and then I can right click the mask thumbnail here and I can hit paste. And we'll let On1 think itself through. If it will paste that in, it looks like it did, but why am I? Okay, got to right click on it, or left click, and then right click and hit paste. There we go. Now it is applied. So if I turn this effect off and turn it back on, you can see I'm just putting a little bit more focus and contrast on the mountain there. So if I hold down the backslash key, here is the before. And if I let it go, here is the after. If you found value in today's content, smash the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. Now, if you want to pick up On1 Photo RAW and save a little bit of money, consider using the link and the coupon code in the description box below. It is an affiliate link and coupon, which means I make a small commission from everyone who uses it, but it's at no extra charge to you. It's a win-win. Now, if you want to learn how to use On1 Photo RAW and have someone look over your shoulder or just show you how to use the software one-on-one, consider signing up for a training call. A link for that can be found in the description box below. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.